Hello, everybody. Justin Stivers, owner of the probate law firm here. Thank you guys for tuning in for the Stivers show. Very excited today. Got a new friend of mine, Jeff Fromknecht, owner, CEO, managing attorney of Side Project, Inc. Good to have you on, Jeff.
Thanks for having me, Justin.
Yes, sir. And so we are, what is today? March 30th. We're still quarantined as of this moment. We'll see what happens. Probably be seeing this a week later from today, but as of right now, we're still safe and sound inside of our apartments and all of that. Everyone's anxious to get out, but we're still going, Jeff. So thank you, brother, for being on the show today, and excited to chat with you. And where I kind of always like to start is who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Sure.
So I describe myself as a community organizer with a law degree. So my background is as a social worker. I have a master's degree in social work from the University of Pittsburgh School of Social Work. My focus was community organizing. So I don't know a lot about counseling. I don't know a lot about most things that most social workers know about, but I do know, and what we studied were how different groups of people organized around social issues over time. We also learned about nonprofit management, budgets, grants, evaluation, all those types of things. I worked as a community organizer for about 6 years, mostly in the disability community in Pittsburgh, and I went to law school at night. It takes 4 years when you go by night, and I graduated in 2012, and we launched Side Project with really the goal of combining the tools of the law, the sort of the tools of the Nonprofit Corporation Act and the tax law with community organizing. And we did that through Side Project, which is a community organizing organization. And so we support nonprofit leaders and grassroots projects in a number of different ways that I'm sure we'll get into a little bit today.
So where does the community organizing, where does that come from? Just something do you have a background in that, or what kind of drew you to doing that type of work?
Yeah, well, I think I've always been drawn to giving back to the community, right? I went to Catholic school my whole life, and you were always encouraged or forced to volunteer and help out in different places. And I began to learn more about the idea of macro change, right? So micro change is me going into a community and doing a project and helping one or two people. Macro change is me going into a community, helping identify an organization that can impact 1,000 people, and then getting that organization up and running, helping getting it funded, making sure it's compliant with all the tax law and federal law and charitable compliance law, and to be able to, to be self-sustaining, have its own board, and to attack whatever problems they want to work on in that community. So the community organizing piece is something that I sort of fell into when I was in grad school. It sounded interesting, helping communities identify their own issues and identify and self-identify problems for those same solutions was something that I was drawn to. But I began to see as a community organizer, a lot of these groups, that you'd have this grassroots group in a neighborhood that would want to go after a grant, and they'd apply for the grant, and the funder maybe liked the project, but they didn't have their tax exempt status, or maybe they had it, but they lost it. And so the more I got into it, the more I began to see that there was a number of legal issues that these groups faced, and none of them had money, right? They couldn't afford a law firm with the rates that most law firms charge.
Interesting. And so now what is kind of the type of organizations that you're working with right now?
Mm-hmm. So Side Project's mission, and we're a 501c3 ourselves. So our charitable mission is support projects focused on social change and social justice. So I would say about half of the projects we work with support disability rights or inclusion efforts. A number of our projects focus on the environment. And I'd say the other third of them focus on children's issues, whether it's, helping kids get to college, helping kids get through college, or helping young kids sort of figure out what their path is. Most of our clients focus in one of those three areas. And we really do three different things at Side Project to help support social change and social justice. The first is, so I'm an attorney, right? Licensed here in Florida as well as in Pennsylvania. And I provide outside general counsel to small to medium-sized nonprofit organizations. So I help with corporate issues, corporate governance issues, policies and procedures, tax issues, executive compensation issues, charitable fundraising compliance issues, and then just run-of-the-mill general counsel stuff, right? Contract review, a little bit of HR things here and there. And we serve about 30, looking at my roster, about 30 nonprofits in this capacity that are able to call me when they have a question or have an issue, and and get help and we charge a low bono rate for that. So it's not pro bono. We don't have enough donors for that yet. We'd like it, but we can't. So we charge a low bono rate, which is based on their revenue. It's a sliding fee scale, and it allows a nonprofit to use their money for their mission while still getting some quality legal advice from me, someone that knows about nonprofits and has been in their shoes. I've worked at nonprofits my whole life. So
why did you all set up as a 501c3? Is there a reason behind that, or?
Yeah, well, the idea is that this group of folks can't afford attorneys, right? We talk a lot in Florida about access to justice. And yeah, there's an access to justice issue for folks trying to get in for family law and for other types of law. But there's also an access to justice for folks that want to start a business or want to start a nonprofit. Most attorneys cost $300, $400 an hour. These folks can't afford that. And so we set up as a nonprofit. Initially, we were funded by a lawyer that I worked for during law school and then after law school. And while I was in law school, he would volunteer me out to other charities that he was involved in or was on the board of to help them with whatever their issue was. And so we initially set up, we're able to offer some very low fees because this gentleman was subsidizing that. That has since ended, but we basically subsidize what we charge our clients with donations from the public. And so that's the main reason we were set up as a charity. The second reason is the second thing that we do is provide fiscal sponsorship. And so the idea of fiscal sponsorship is, think of an umbrella, corporate umbrella, and you can have different projects underneath that umbrella. And so Side Project acts as the fiscal sponsor for about 12 to 13, and there may be 15 projects right now that operate in the community. They all have a project director, but they're all a part of Side Project at the end of the day. And so in order to do that, we needed to be a 501c3 so that these organizations can fundraise, get grants, get donations, and so on and so forth.
So, we were talking, so our mutual connection is Lucinda over at Center for Social Change. And, when I was speaking with her, she was saying, they kind of have this incubator for nonprofits, and she was saying, one of the challenges that there's so many people trying to start nonprofits and just these organizations in general. And that's almost like they need to come together and pool their resources, because you've maybe got 2 people over here doing something, 10 people over here doing the goals are the same essentially. Do you get involved in the, just business strategizing? Because they're a business, right? The nonprofits at the end of the day, they're need to be run like a business. At least I think they should be. But do you get involved in that side of it and say, maybe pool your resources or just give general business guidance, or if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And, we always tell people it's called social work. And the first part of that is social. You're going to have to play with others. You're going to have to work with others. And one of the things that we do with everyone with all the projects that call us up, and we sort of break them down into whether they're in the idea phase, which means that they have an idea in their head, and maybe they don't have it on paper yet. They haven't got any funding yet. They haven't got started yet. Startup stage, where they've been doing some things. They have some money. They have some revenue. Maybe they have a business plan. And then growth and regeneration and and then winding down. And so for the groups in the idea phase, we go through a planning process with them. And part of that is to do a community asset map and to identify who else is in the community doing what you want to do, or trying to impact the community that you're trying to impact, right? So if you're trying to help kids go to college, who else is in your neighborhood or your county doing that? And what are they doing? Because you're right, you don't necessarily want to be duplicative of services. That's not going to help anyone. But at the same time, if you look at the major issues that we're addressing, right? College education, economic justice, these types of issues, there's room for more players in the field, right? The numbers aren't that there are, there's too many people helping homeless people, and now we don't have any homeless people, right? That's the goal. But obviously we're not there. There's still homeless people. There's still people with disabilities that aren't included in the community as much as they want to be. There's still folks that would like to start a business that can't. And so we tell people, in the for-profit world, in a market economy, new businesses are always welcome. But a lot of times in the nonprofit world, funders and other folks will put up some barriers to entry because they say, well, we don't need more nonprofits. There's not enough resources to go around. We don't buy into that idea. We actually believe that more nonprofits is a good thing because we want to see the community engaged. We want to see the community saying, hey, I see an issue in my neighborhood and I have some ideas of how I want to fix it, and I'm going to get together with some of my neighbors and try to do that. And so to your point, we do encourage folks to do that community asset map, to identify who else is out there, and to try to establish collaborations as much as they can. But, I tell people, you may, sometimes in the nonprofit world, you say, well, there's already a group doing that. Let them do it. We don't, if we use that mentality in the business world, we wouldn't have a CVS and a Walgreens on every corner. And then across the street from there, there's a PNC Bank and a Bank of America. And so we believe that competition in the nonprofit sector is healthy. Small nonprofits are often, and new nonprofits are often much more reactive to community needs because they're able to adjust and shift their mission or their goals at least faster than a bigger nonprofit. The bigger the nonprofit is, usually the more administration there is and the slower it is to adapt. So we think there's a place for both, but yeah, we do encourage folks to try to collaborate where they can, and to try to not just, if there's someone in your neighborhood doing the exact same thing you're doing with the same people you want to do it with, maybe you need to rethink that. But that's very rarely, I think, the case.
So I know you are in Palm Beach now, recently, Wellington recently relocated.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys were operating in Florida before moving here, or no?
No, we launched in Florida. We got started when I moved to Florida and was beginning to study for the bar exam. We sort of got side project off the ground. We weren't providing legal services at that time as much. I mean, we had an attorney that was licensed, that was sort of guiding that ship, but we weren't charging for it at that time. But when we started in Florida, when we moved down here in August of 2012, we operate sort of a virtual practice. We have clients in Pennsylvania, primarily Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Erie, a few in Eastern Pennsylvania. And then down here in South Florida, we have a few clients in Tampa. We've had a client in Jacksonville. And folks, we generally do try to meet with our clients, and we really value the face-to-face and getting to know them and getting to learn more about what they're doing. But most of our clients are busy people, right? Like the idea of side project is that we're helping people with their charitable side projects. And so I would say 50% of our clients work a full-time job and then have a charity that they do on the side. And so most of our clients really don't want to come to our office. They just want us to handle the stuff that we're going to handle, to let them know it's done and that they don't have to worry about it. And so the virtual practice has been working out fairly well. I mean, we maintain a co-working space in Boynton Beach, and we've partnered with them, and we call that our Center for Nonprofits. at Cowork Boynton. And we offer the Cowork Boynton people do a special discount to the nonprofits that would like to set up there. And it's a traditional open concept co-working space. And there's about 9 nonprofits there right now. We're really trying to model as much as we can what they're doing in Miami at the Center for Social Change.
Yeah.
What Lucinda and her team are doing there, she's really creating a community of like-minded people that are trying to make the community a better place. And we would like to do that. We started off virtually and we've had some success, but when we go down and visit places like Lucinda's, you see the energy. You'd say you've been there. You see the energy in that building, and that's hard to replicate online.
Yeah. I would be curious. So I know you kind of mentioned the couple types of nonprofits, disability and some of the other environment, some of the other areas that you guys primarily, or the majority of your clients are in. Is there something maybe you see in Florida where you would like to see a little bit more people targeting that issue?
Well, I think in Florida there, I've been my work is very inspiring because you see a lot of people out there trying to address different issues.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the issue in Florida that I think is maybe that I think that I'd like to see people coordinate a little bit more on is the scholarship world, right? South Florida is so blessed in terms of how much wealth there is down here. When you look at data for private foundations, Palm Beach County, Broward County, Miami-Dade County has a disproportionate number of private foundations, which is, a tool that wealthy folks use to get tax advantages. And then these private foundations have to distribute money out or do scholarships. And a number of these individuals do scholarships, and some of them talk and some of them don't. But the scholarships, it's refreshing to see how much scholarship philanthropy is happening down here. But it would be nice, I think, if the funders got together or these scholarship providers got together more and coordinated their efforts a little bit more. In terms of, issues in South Florida, our approach is, that we're not going to define what issues we think are important. That's the role of our clients. That's one of the tenets of community organizing that I bring that over to Side Project, is this idea that as an outsider to an area, right? I'm not going to come in and say that I know what's best for that community. As a community organizer, my role is going to be to go into that community, to identify the leaders, the natural leaders of that area, and to help them begin to work to identify what they think their issues are. And then to work with them to enlist other members of their community and develop solutions to that.
Yeah.
And so that's the type of work that we do. We sort of listen to our community and let them come to tell us what's important. And when folks call us up, and say, hey, I want to start a nonprofit, one of the first questions we ask them, or we want to hear from them, is why? Why is what you're doing important? And if their only answer is, well, I think it is, and they haven't spoke with anyone in that neighborhood or in that community, or they don't have a personal experience in that area, we suggest that they continue to do some research to make sure that their solution is that there's a problem for their solution, and that it's a solution that the community is interested in buying into.
Sure. No, I couldn't agree more. I think I told you before, I was in the Peace Corps before I went to law school, and that's exactly kind of our role was, they would send us to a community, and in my eyes, I could identify all of these problems that I think needed to get fixed. But if they weren't interested in it, and in the beginning, I tried all of these different things, which I thought were very, why do you not want to have running water? Why do you not want to, all these sort of issues? And it took, months of me just going and literally sitting down with each person, identifying the community leaders, and have them tell me, these are what I think the issues are, which are issues. But yeah, you can't just go into a community and say, oh, this is what's wrong, this is what we need to fix, because you're not going to get the buy-in from the community. So I think that's spot on. I know we're running low on time, so I just have maybe 2 more questions. But what would you say to some, because you do probably get a lot of calls of people saying, "Hey, I want to start this nonprofit or whatnot." What is maybe some actionable advice you could give to maybe someone out there saying, "Hey, you've got this idea. These are the steps maybe you should think before you go all in."
Yeah, well, I think the first thing that you want to do is put your plan on paper, write it down, right? Whether it's a business plan or which is useful, right? And by business plan, I mean, how are you going to fund it? What are you going to do, and how are you going to fund it? And that usually includes putting a budget together. I would also think about having a fundraising strategy in writing, right? A lot of these things, a lot of what we do with folks in the idea phase is help them begin to take their idea from their head and put it onto paper, because that is often a difficult process. And you need to, because you're going to need to write grants, you're going to need to have funding appeals, and you're going to need to be able to tell people what your idea is in just a few minutes, right? You're not just going to be able to go through everything you've ever wanted to do. You're going to be able to tell them, this is what we're focused on for the next 3 to 6 months. This is how much it's going to cost. This is how we're going to raise money. And so we really suggest that people get their idea in writing. A business plan would be great. A budget is even better. There's a tool we share with people called a logic model, which has folks identify their resources, human capital, social capital, financial capital, identify their activities, and then their intended outputs. And so the first thing we suggest to people is get your idea in writing, put it on paper. I think the second thing is something that you sort of touched on earlier, is find out who else is doing this work in the community. In social work, in grad school, we called it a windshield survey, where you would drive around a neighborhood and see what's in the neighborhood. Are there coffee shops? Are there bookstores? Are there bars, restaurants, social service agencies, churches, community centers, YMCAs, whatever it is? But figure out what else is out there. And, a lot of times we get calls from people that say, we're going to do this because no one else is doing this. I know right away when someone tells me that they're full of crap, because as a social worker, there's a resource out there for almost any issue that you're having. It's just a matter of accessing it. Now, maybe the resources that are available aren't any good. Maybe there's a waiting list. So I'm not saying that every resource is accessible, but if you call me and say, well, there's no services for homeless people in Palm Beach County, that's a lie. You haven't looked. And so that's the second thing, is figure out what else is happening in your community. Because when you go to talk to funders, when you talk to donors that give in those areas, they're going to know. And if you don't know, you're going to look foolish. It's not to say that you have to be the only one. I mean, that's not usually a requirement for funding, is that you're the only one providing the service. You just usually have to have a plan. So have a plan, figure out who else is doing what you're interested in doing, or at least working with the community that you're interested in working with. Those are the two biggest things that I think are important for someone that's in the starting out phase. And then we always encourage people to see if they can partner with someone, right? Find a fiscal sponsor, find an existing organization that you can bring your project to. Those options are always 1,000 times easier than starting your own nonprofit.
Yeah, I think that's great. Jeff, man, love the work you guys are doing. I think that's awesome. I know there'll probably be people out there wanting to find a way to get involved, or at least refer people they know to you that are maybe in one of the stages. So what's maybe the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple ways. One is you can reach out to us on social media, right? We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn. You can message us, and we'll get back to you right away. You can also go to our website. It's sideprojectinc.org, and you can schedule free appointments with me to learn more about our legal services, or to have a free legal consultation. We do a free compliance review. You can also learn more about our fiscal sponsorship program there. And we have a number of resources on our website. We have some videos. If you aren't bored, or my voice hasn't put you to sleep yet, we have some videos on starting a nonprofit, on fiscal sponsorship, on things like that. And a number of
the website's great. A lot of good information on there.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay, awesome, Jeff. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it, man. And keep up the good fight. Stay healthy and safe during these bizarre times. We'll talk to you soon, man.
All right. Thank you, Justin. Take care.